Welcome everyone to Yoga Samadhi on the Hermitage live stream. We're just going to do a sound check on the live stream, just make sure everybody can hear us, see how it's going. For those of you who don't know me online, I'm Ajahn Cunda. I think everybody else has met me before or seen me.
Hands in Anjali, so I assume that means...
Hands in Anjali means you can probably hear me.
Sound is perfect.
Sound is perfect, okay. That's very rare. That's very good. So, as we usually do, we'll do a guided meditation, and just for about a half an hour, and then a short stretch break, and maybe a short reflection, or just go into a question and answer. We'll see what comes up. So this evening we'll do a guided meditation on metta, and I'll just repeat some phrases that I use, and you can take them up. So I'll give some guidance around metta meditation, which is meditation on goodwill, loving kindness. So if you get yourself into a comfortable position, keep your back straight but not too tight. And relax your shoulders. Feel any tension in your body. And relax your muscles, tendons, joints. Especially the muscles around your face, eyes, mouth. So when we practice metta meditation, loving kindness meditation, we can repeat phrases to ourselves. That's one of the usual techniques that is done. And the purpose of practicing loving kindness meditation is to generate the feeling of loving kindness, the feeling of goodwill. It's a feeling of metta. So when we're repeating phrases to ourselves, we want those phrases to generate this feeling. So in a way, we're kind of trying to get an engine warmed and working. And we don't just, if we're trying to do that with an engine, we don't just ask it to start. Please, engine, start. We have to do something to make it work. And so these phrases aren't just to be repeated, they're actually to bring up this feeling of goodwill. So if you think about positive feelings you might have towards others, sometimes this is hard for people to generate for themselves. Feelings you might have for someone you regard highly, like a teacher or a spiritual leader, or a leader who you think has a lot of integrity, or it could be for family members, although they can be tricky. The safest thing for me is a purring kitten in my lap. I have no sense of harm towards this being, or a sleeping puppy, something like that. For others, it could be like a sleeping child. We have that feeling of goodwill, non-harming, kindness, wishing well. So the phrases I'm going to start with and use are focused on yourself. As the meditation progresses, you can change it to wishing well for other beings, specific people. Could be animals, could be all people. It's up to you. Again, the senses generating that feeling of warmth and kindness in your own heart. So I'll introduce some phrases that I use, and you can use some of them. I'll do this a few times, and then I'll be quiet for a while. May I be happy and filled with joy. May I be peaceful and calm. May no harm come to me. May no difficulty come to me. May I be free from negativity, jealousy, and ill will. May I be filled with positivity, gladness, and goodwill. Wishing with loving kindness and compassion, may all beings be at ease. May I have the patience, determination, integrity, and wisdom to meet and overcome the inevitable difficulties and failures in life. May I always meet with spiritual success. May I be happy and filled with joy. May I be peaceful and calm. May no harm come to me. May no difficulty come to me. May I be free from negativity, jealousy, and ill will. May I be filled with positivity, gladness, and goodwill. Wishing with loving kindness and compassion, may all beings be at ease. May I have the patience, determination, integrity, and wisdom to meet and overcome the inevitable difficulties and failures in life. May I always meet with spiritual success. May I be happy and filled with joy. May I be peaceful and calm. May no harm come to me. May no difficulty come to me. May I be free from negativity, jealousy, and ill will. May I be filled with positivity, gladness, and goodwill. Wishing with loving kindness and compassion, may all beings be at ease. May I have the patience, determination, integrity, and wisdom to meet and overcome the inevitable difficulties and failures in life. May I always meet with spiritual success. May I be happy and filled with joy. May I be peaceful and calm. May no harm come to me. May no difficulty come to me. May I be free from negativity, jealousy, and ill will. May I be filled with positivity, gladness, and goodwill. Wishing with loving kindness and compassion, may all beings be at ease. May I have the patience, determination, integrity, and wisdom to meet and overcome the inevitable difficulties and failures in life. May I always meet with spiritual success. So we can take a short break and stretch our legs. So welcome everyone again to Yoga Samadhi and the Hermitage live stream. I'm experiencing a bit of worldly liberation right now without a mask, and it feels quite nice, but I'm sure my mind will figure something else to complain about, find something else pretty quickly. I hope everyone out there as well, and in your minds and hearts, you're well. This time at the Hermitage, I've mentioned we're on our winter retreat, so it's a quieter time for us, and I can hopefully speak correctly for the others and for myself, saying that it's quite a nice time, nice feeling in the monastery. A lot of practicing on our own and seeing each other occasionally. Last week there was a question I had, actually after the live stream, about how to deal with difficult news, and that was in particular what's happening right now, the Ukraine war with Russia, or I should say Russia's war with Ukraine. And it's especially good reflection after practicing metta for a little bit. I've mentioned before that I've pretty much successfully had a news blackout for over a year, so I haven't been reading the news. Every now and again I'll check something, some headline or something, just to be, usually just about COVID, see if there's anything that I need to know, but usually not so much. And occasionally when I'm checking that, then I'll see some other headline, but it's pretty rare. And I've done this on and off before, but it's just such a pleasant experience being tuned out from the clutter of what others say is important to pay attention to, the ups and downs, and the inevitable ups and downs that keep occurring in the world. To quote Ajahn, he gave a talk a long time ago that was entitled, "This World is a War-Torn Country." It's not just two particular countries that are fighting each other. It's the whole world, and we're in it. And it just depends on how we see things. We see our own experience in our own life. My own experience, just checking things out. I asked some people about what was happening. So there was some concern about it, and they told me what they knew. And then I looked at the news for just very briefly, maybe 20 minutes. And that was enough for this to enter into the mind as a thought world that had to be discussed by the many opinions in my head. And I I could see a tension around there needing to be some sort of conclusion, or there needing to be some sort of triumph for the underdog. There is a sense of things not being fair and not right. And why aren't other people doing things? Why isn't something being done to correct what's happening? Where's the diplomacy? What's happening? And I could just immediately see, well, the mind is just picking up on some other thread. It doesn't matter really what it is, you know. There's always wars going on, and human beings inevitably will probably always experience war in one way or another. As long as there's greed, hatred, and delusion, that's inevitable. And it doesn't mean that we ignore the world, we ignore those who are in need. It doesn't mean that. We can surely help others. We can lend our support. We can even help shelter people, give financial support, give material support. And so that kind of generosity is very good. But when we're focusing on something like that's happening out there, and we're given information that somebody else is telling us that we believe is accurate, we're forgetting that there's a war in our own heart. That if we aren't free from greed, hatred, and delusion, if we aren't free from fear, jealousy, anger, craving, then it's just as if we are in that war that we're so averse to in the world. And so what's important is in the mind, it's in the heart. What's important is what we're doing with our own minds. So ultimately we are trying to uproot these negative qualities in ourselves and introduce those positive qualities that we practiced with in the last half hour that we were meditating. We're bringing in kindness, compassion. In the phrase, free of jealousy and filled with gladness. Gladness is that sense of being happy for another person's success rather than jealous. Rather than, why not me? I deserve it. Or that sense of caring, compassion for others, wishing others well. Those are the qualities that end the war in our own hearts, but they also help to end the war in the world. Because the more people there are in the world that endeavor to be free of these defilements, then there can be a real possibility of lasting peace for many people. And most importantly, lasting peace in the mind. If you think perhaps for yourselves around some issue that has come up while you were meditating, you might be saying these phrases of goodwill and kindness, and then off the mind slips into something that's wrong, some sort of discontent with your experience or with somebody you know. And you can be having those thoughts even while you're saying, may I be well, may I be happy, or may others be well and happy. So we are generating that warmth in the heart, we are trying to bring that up for ourselves, because that feeling allows the mind to be free. There are many qualities that we can engender within ourselves when we have a heart of metta, heart of kindness. One of the things that that occurs is that people aren't afraid of us. People can pick that up, that energy up, that feeling up. Buddha talks about other benefits like sleeping well, but mostly the mind. The mind is at ease, and it becomes pliable, pliant, easy to work with, easy to experience joy, to increase joy. And with joy there's, as I said, less jealousy, there's less anger, there becomes less craving. You can relax more easily. And of course we sometimes will work with that sense of loss when happiness fades. But we also work to understand how we can generate it, how we can bring it up in our own minds. Metta is an antidote to aversion to anger, so it's very helpful when we're experiencing that in a situation, self-righteousness or righteousness with another person. So, yeah, rather than kind of looking out into the world and seeing what's wrong and how it shouldn't be that way, we can look inside and understand how to free our hearts. One of the things that people sometimes have images of is like Buddhist monks or nuns in caves or in solitary retreats, in forests, and meditating alone, and perhaps for years. And while it's true there are some monks and nuns who do that, there are a lot more that are very much integrated with other people. And so if we look at the Buddha Suttas, then a lot of the life of the Buddhist monastics are in connection with other people. How to live in harmony, how to live with communal harmony. One of the scholar monks, Bhikkhu Bodhi, has a book. I think it's called Social and Communal Harmony. It might be in the Buddha's teachings or it's something like that, but there's a lot there. There's a lot the Buddha teaches, especially around ethics, how to get along with others. And so there is also a touching into the fact that we need to live with others. We need to be able to have harmony with our families, with our loved ones, with our non-loved ones. And it's just an important part of our practice. Our teacher, Ajahn, who was the teacher of many of the senior Western monks in our tradition, he really emphasized this group practice and living together and working together, because he saw that could really help people who are practitioners to wake up clearly to their own sometimes isolationist attitudes around, well, if there weren't other people around, I wouldn't suffer. And of course that's not really true. If there are other people around, then we suffer, but we can see it and we can work with it, and it helps us. They're teachers for us, if we allow them to be. Teachers in wisdom, also teachers sometimes in annoyance, teachers in all kinds of ways. So surely most of the monks I live with, we try to have a sense of humor around these things, because it's not always easy living with each other. I told Ajahn Panyo today, I said, well, give us another year, we could be cohabits together. He didn't say yes. But there's that sense of, working through and working with and understanding. But also one of the ways that we practice is trying to, as I'm talking about, uproot our own defilements, and these, when they come up around others, are very helpful to try to understand more clearly, where is it that I could head in a better direction with another person. So this weekend that occurred. I was working on something with Ajahn Panyo, and I saw the joy that arose. It was in sharing, essentially sharing of space and sharing of conversation, and I could see in myself, I'd been holding things too tightly in certain ways. And the irony of that is that holding sometimes feels protective and helpful, but it's not. And we can't see it on the other side unless we let go, unless we try to invoke this sense of more kindness and caring and being open and tolerant. And so when we're open and tolerant, then we bring that into our own hearts when we're tolerant of others. But usually it really needs to start with ourselves. As I was saying, these metta phrases, they're about, may I be happy. And we've probably heard this quote, there is no one more deserving of metta than oneself, to wish oneself this loving kindness. And that's good to try to take in and feel, well, what is that like for you when you hear that? Do you feel that way about yourself? Are you willing to see that it's more important for you to wish yourself kindness, wellness, peace, calm, joy, happiness? To wish yourself free from troubles, anxiety? And if it's not easy, well, I think that's pretty normal. But that's something to work on, something to really try to understand, and again to generate that feeling of warmth, to bring that up, and fairly often, fairly often. So I just urge you to practice with this sometimes and try these phrases out. And if anybody has any questions or comments about things, or comments about their own experience. Susan?
Nice talk. Could you expand on spiritual success and what it means to you or what it might mean to us?
Okay. Susan has a question around spiritual success and what it means to me or what it might mean for another person. So that was from the phrase, may I always meet with spiritual success. Well, it's interesting because that phrase followed inevitable difficulties and failures. So it's not ignoring the fact that even though we wish ourselves to have success, there are also failures and difficulties we'll experience in life. I think spiritual success is an individual matter for us to kind of work out for ourselves what it means, but in our practice, I'd say the basics are a sense of waning discontent and increasing satisfaction with your own happiness. And so that would look like things to me as like being able to let go more easily, to notice my own views that I'm holding to very strongly that are not leading me in a skillful direction, and being willing to drop them more quickly, seeing that they're not leading me in a skillful direction. It would be, something as simple as I'm feeling like arguing with this person, and I just notice that I'm able to just put it down immediately and just kind of move away from that. And maybe there's even a sense of like, with spiritual success, why would I want to complicate that? Why would I want to complicate my own mind? And you recognize that. And you say, oh yeah, I don't want to do that. And then you let go of that complication. So in meditation, that would come up a lot. As I was talking about, just reading a little bit about the news, and then just seeing the complication that it caused, and that it wasn't helpful for me. So I was saying, I don't want to go back to that, nor do I find it very helpful. I do see that it's helpful to then wish people goodwill and kindness, to generate that habit, rather than worry or anxiety or there's something wrong here. So spiritual success is really I think that the sense that one has that there is change occurring, but there are also insights, insights you can gain, as the Buddhist teachings around the Four Noble Truths. When he says there is suffering, this is really an insight to work on and kind of think about and understand in oneself. And it's not so straightforward. People say, well, yeah, of course it's suffering. I suffer every day. I have discontent every day, or I have stress every day. There's something a little bit wrong in my experience. So that's essentially what you try to, you kind of work with it. But then the success, I would say, is when you gain insight into it. You say, oh, wow, this is really true. You have a real sense of something, a real understanding of it. Like, it penetrates you so deeply that you feel, oh, this is a noble truth. This is actually the way things are. I didn't see it before. Like something like that. I didn't see it before. I didn't understand it until now. Or how he talks about desire, unwholesome desires leading to that suffering. How is that causing the suffering? Why would that be the cause? And then sometimes we just get it. We understand it. So the success is really also based on these insights, but it's just kind of, it's also just in the quality of mind that we see when we're not like always hankering after something, or trying to get to something, or trying to hold on to something, and we let it go, and it's like almost like a muscle we've developed, and then it starts to act on itself. Just kind of like, oh yeah, of course I can give you this. And then we witness that within ourselves, and then we watch our success as the happiness, the goodness that arises out of that. So to me, those are measures of spiritual success. Well-being and content, being content. Especially this helps when there's something you normally wouldn't be content with, and then you're like, I'm okay. It's all right. Do you have any ideas of what you would think of as spiritual success?
Well, I think when I start my day with, may I be well, may I be peaceful, may I be free from pain and suffering, my day goes better.
Huh.
So that in itself is probably my success.
Yeah. Yeah, and you don't, if you're not noticing that, that's another thing is, as I've been kind of mentioning here and there, like part of this whole process is you're actually observing your experience and the causes and conditions. So you're observing the cause, or the condition that, that was there because of that. So, and that's part of the, part of the path. Colleen.
Could you speak to staying off the news? Because I often will do news blackouts as well, and I find that my well-being is much improved.
Yeah.
I often don't know what's going on,
Yeah.
but I've also found the world does just fine or does poorly, either way, without me personally knowing what's going on.
Right.
On the other hand, I don't want to completely put my head in the sand regarding the suffering of the world, but I also feel like I'm well aware of it. So I don't know. Can you speak to that?
Well, yeah, I think what I was talking about was that, I mean, there's a quote that I often remember that's, why so much concern with news from abroad when all that concerns either life or death is alive inside of me. So we have a sense that it's sort of a guilty sense, like if I don't know what other people know, then I'm not only misinformed, but I'm pretending that there's no problem out there, and it's like I'm leading a superficial life because I don't suffer with the people who are suffering out there. And I think that that's an erroneous view. If one actually had the wrong view that there are no people suffering, or that there are, or whatever it could be, I mean, that's not where you're coming from. So I think the main quality you want to stay with is reminding yourself that if you don't pay attention to the worldly affairs, and most importantly, people who are telling you what to pay attention to, there's bad news. There's some more bad news. It's really bad. That's what we hear. Then you can identify, like, oh, if I don't pay attention to that, then that's actually beneficial to my mind. And then you have this feeling of, but if I don't know, then other people are going to think I'm ignorant, or I'm that I'm insensitive. And you kind of have to, I think you have to kind of be like, well, they can think that, because that's not your experience. Your experience is that you do know that there is suffering. And to have to know specific suffering, I don't know if that's necessary. So I think it's really working with that feeling of I'm wrong, or there's something wrong with what I'm doing, or like I listened to people. Unfortunately, I asked people to describe to me what was happening who were visiting, and they told me all about it, the Ukraine war, and that's where it started. Then I watched a little bit of news after that, but I was able to stop. I was able to put it down pretty quickly, and see that it wasn't helpful. So I think maybe the best part is just to keep reminding yourself of the goodness that arises out of not paying attention to it. To say, like, this is just going to complicate my experience. And the other thing is, like, you can pretty much absorb the important news that people have, or not that people have, that is necessary to know in the world, just by talking to another person. And so, when that plane went into that building in New York, or those two buildings, those planes, that was pretty unbelievable. Oh, what happened? And people would say, you didn't hear about that? That's unbelievable.
I've had that happen many times.
Yeah, but they might actually be inspired. They might be inspired. I mean, people might be inspired by just not knowing that much. And also, like, if they're not, that's okay. That's their kind of ignorance of needing to chase things and thinking that that's the right way is just to be up on the news and up on everything. I see a huge benefit in it. It really does change the complications that go on in my own mind, and then you deal with more petty complications in your own life sometimes, and then you do have a sense of, like, okay, this isn't. You have a sense of maybe how to solve them, because you can actually deal with those. And maybe you let's say you read a pamphlet or something, and it's like, oh, there's these refugees that need some shelter. And, oh, you don't really need to know that much to say oh, maybe I could help out in that way. Maybe I could either feed them or I could shelter them or whatever. And that doesn't take a lot of news. That just takes an open heart and a heart of kindness. So I just think reminding ourselves of those complications that we're freeing ourselves from because of watching how addictive and obsessive paying attention to things especially political news, it's just soap opera, the stuff that goes on. So, and the other thing is that news causes those defilements to increase, not to decrease. Modern news is increasing aversion, anger, despair, especially fear. Now you can find good news. Some of the people who are visiting saying that there's this fellow that has this good news hour or something, and he literally he works for some major news outlet, and it's literally under his desk. He reports from under his desk, and he reports on all these good news events, but he has to do it under his desk because he can't be seen in his major news outlet being reporting good news.
It's also part of associating with the wise too, right? Deciding who gets your attention.
Yeah. And so also just thinking about the waste, like what you're talking about, the waste of time. So that when I was just told about someone who had a very difficult, or a very negative diagnosis, and basically a life-threatening diagnosis. And then within an hour, they just wanted to talk about politics and how bad this or that is. And that's just how it is. Our minds will just do anything rather than deal with the reality of our own lives. And so there's how we associate with the wise or wise voices is really what's going to be helpful to us. And I don't know if I've really ever heard a news report that's really associating with the wise, because we already know there's conflict in the world, and it's complicated and difficult, but there's also conflict in our own hearts and minds. And that's what at least the Buddha pointed out, that's where you want to pay attention to is that part. That's something you can do something about. Whereas these things in the world, can we really influence a war? No, but we can meet our common, brothers and sisters in aging, sickness, and death with kindness and helpfulness and goodness. That old phrase, or I think it was in the 80s, it came out, think globally, act locally. This is very important. It's you can help your own family, you can help the people who live around you. We're helped every week by you. Is there anything else that comes up around that?
Thank you.
Yeah, the other thing you can do is just, if you ever have an inclination to read the news, just pick up a Dhamma book instead. Or listen to some Dhamma. Anything else from anyone? How about on the live stream?
There's only one question, which is, are you coming to Seattle?
There's only one question.
You can ask if there's any question online.
Is there any questions on the live stream? If there are, you can post them. There's only one question, is whether I'm coming to Seattle. And that's the plan. We'll see what happens. Plans are, they're just plans. So we'll see if I'm in Seattle on the 24th of March, then you'll know I'm in Seattle. But that's when I'm supposed to be there and joining Tan Nisbo and Ajahn Panyo on Saturday. There's an event, I think it's St. Mark's Cathedral, that Tanisibo goes to every week. So we're planning on being there on Saturday, the 26th. Well, there doesn't have to be questions. We can also...
Scott Bartel said, hello, Bante, I have a question.
Okay.
I think he's right, taking it off.
All right. Typing it out. How many people here have practiced or practiced metta as a common thing in your spiritual practice, or your wishing yourself well, or yeah? Some of the monastics, that'll be their whole practice. That'll be like a main practice for them. It's often recommended to people who have tendencies towards anger. It's a helpful antidote. It's also helpful for people who have negativity towards themselves. So it's quite useful, especially in that realm of like how Lumpur Sucitto calls unseating the inner tyrant. So that tyrant of the mind, this sort of, it's not even necessarily like that, like harsh or incredibly negative. It's just this sense that there's these voices we deal with that are just saying like, oh, that's not right, or you should have done better. Even when we're meditating, it's like we become aware for a moment. It's, I can't believe I was like lost in some story again. I'm so stupid. When am I ever going to get this meditation right? And the irony is that if you keep doing that, you're never going to want to meditate, because you know that's the whole point of becoming aware. Is there's a joy that occurs. Oh, I'm aware again. Great. I've come off of my story. That's wonderful. Hallelujah. And so that's really what we want to try to bring up, rather than this chiding element. Or, I mean, if you're just riding yourself during a meditation about how bad of a meditator you are, then what's the point of meditating? So we want to try to at least identify, like, I'm glad I sat down to be quiet for a moment, even if I feel like my mind was a mess. That was a good intention to sit down. Or I'm glad I was aware my mind was a mess. Whatever it is, there's some goodness to be had there. Yes?
There's a question from Sumit Singh Johar. Is trauma a result of increase in defilements due to being in touch with verbally abusive person for long?
Is trauma the result of increased defilements due to being
in touch with verbally abusive person for long?
Due to being in touch with a verbally abusive person
for a long time.
For a long time. No, well, the word trauma is that one is traumatized. So no, I mean that would be an outside source that is harmful to another person. How we respond to that is, of course, based on our conditioning and how we do work with our own minds. Most people, or a lot of people in the world, are just pressed up so much against their own difficulties and problems that they may not have the opportunity to be able to practice the Dhamma. So it's also to understand that practicing the Dhamma, understanding our own minds, is it's something that it's not always available to everyone, and so how we react to extremely difficult problems in our lives is of course due to our own learning about our own minds, but there are many people who just don't have the tools for that to learn. So it's not like, I don't know, it seems like when if I was to say, yeah, it's due to your own defilement that you have this trauma that you can't deal with, I don't think it's that clear. I think each of us has to work with what we have, and so some of us have success and opportunities to do so, and others of us don't. So I think the better way to look at it is you start where you are and you figure out what you can deal with, but it's not a kind of an excuse to say, to kind of think about all the things wrong that I should be able to deal with, but I can't because I'm not good enough. So, like to say, for example, that if one experiences trauma that from an abusive person, then that's just my own fault, or I deserved it, or we think that's what karma means. And I think I said before that the word deserve is actually nowhere in the canon. Nowhere does the Buddha ever says that karma has anything to do with deserving. But vipaka karma is what I'm talking about, the results of your actions. It's more that, like a fact, it's like when we do something, then there is a reaction, there is something that happens as a result of that. But it's not about one's deserving of it, or that one is defiled and can't deal with something, so it's just your fault. So that's not really the meaning of karma and vipaka karma, actions and results of actions. It's just the fact that there are causes and conditions in life. And so for some people, traumas can be so deep that there's just really almost no way out. It's like it's like what scientists, I remember learning in psychology class how, if you learned helplessness, so if you have a rat who is continued to be drowned, and it learns that it can't do anything about that until whatever the researcher lets go of them or something like that. So they have no control. They just become naturally depressed and they can't get out of that state. It's just impossible for them. Another experiment, these are very horrible experiments, but rats were tested on where they were electrocuted, and some rats were electrocuted randomly and others had control of it. Like if they pressed a lever, I think they could turn off the electrocution. And it was those rats who had some control that thrived more. But some people just don't, they might be exposed to somebody who they just can't get out of in terms of a relationship, and for whatever reason. And so they've learned that that's just how their life is, and so it's very sad, but it's how it can be sometimes.
I would like to clarify about some views about what makes up a person. It seems some diagnoses assume an identity view. Can the Bhante comment?
Some diagnoses assume an identity view. Can I comment?
Yeah.
Yeah, I mean, a diagnosis is sort of a partitioning. I mean, if we're talking about a psychological diagnosis, I think he's talking about a psychological diagnosis rather than liver cancer. Because I don't think that would be a question necessarily about identity view. So in terms of a psychological diagnosis, we kind of, the way that that's done is usually categorizing a person's behavior into a sort of, what we'd say, nama rupa, which is like name and form. So we create a sense of what a person is, or what, based on their behavior. So they're labeled. And so that's been a problem for a long time, just the idea of labeling someone. So then you just see the label, you no longer see the person. And in terms of that being part of identity view, yeah, that would be really having a sense of like how people identify with their own minds or their own experiences, or believing in some sort of permanent label or self, or I am this way, I'm always this way, or seeing themselves as that label, like saying, I'm a schizophrenic, so therefore, on and on that line would go. I'm like this, I do this, I have that experience. I'm like all of these people who are labeled schizophrenics. Whereas two different people who are labeled schizophrenic might have completely different experiences. So diagnoses are not, I see where they might have some useful tools, but for treatment, but they're not always accurate. They're not very helpful sometimes for everyone. I'm not sure if that's what Scott wanted me to comment on, but
Well, he just offered clarification that he meant psychological diagnosis.
yeah, psychological diagnoses. They can pigeonhole people. They can make people feel like that's what they are, and it's not always a useful thing for people to receive. It's kind of a big subject. I was a psychology major and an anthropology major, so diagnoses were just part of that world. But yeah, I think it's a big controversy. But I think in the sort of Buddhist context, I would say that in terms of how we see others or ourselves, diagnoses are probably not a useful category to get too attached to for oneself or others, because they don't allow for nuance. They're just sort of rigid. And they don't allow for that fluidity of identity, as you're talking about, or that self. Are we all
There's another question.
okay? How about one more question?
From an anonymous, sort of anonymous question. Can you experience sloth and torpor at the same time as restlessness and remorse? Aren't they opposite forces?
Can you experience restlessness and remorse and sloth and torpor at the same time? Or are they opposite forces? Or how is it possible to do that? Well, are these hindrances, so there's, unwholesome greed and desire, aversion, anger, hatred, those are two hindrances. There is, as what's mentioning, sloth and torpor, tiredness, or it's more laziness. You can have laziness and also like a sense of tiredness in the mind that's more like maybe related more to boredom and restlessness and worry. That's kind of this flurry. The mind is kind of can't calm down. And then there's doubt about, what am I doing this right? Is this right? Should I be doing it differently? It's doubting all the time. So in terms of sloth and torpor, I guess my answer to that is that I don't really see the mind as being stuck in pure hindrances. So in other words, like, it's possible to be slothful and lazy, and that be predominantly what one's experiencing. But then there can be a sense of restlessness, or movement of mind in the back of that, or kind of going back and forth into those. I've definitely experienced meditations where I've been slothful and had torpor, and then I move into restlessness and worry. So yeah, I think the hindrances kind of, just like the khandhas there, they're like heaped together. They're not usually isolated to a degree where I'm just purely angry. There's other things operating at the same time. Like, for example, desire and anger are quite interesting because when you desire something, you're often not wanting something else. Or if you are wanting to get away from something, you're feeling aversive, it's because you want some other condition. So they're these kind of yin-yang, the two of them together. But I would say, when one is really sunk in sloth and torpor, it's hard to really think that you're restless or worried, because there's just so much exhaustion in the mind. But yeah, I think that might answer your question. Okay. So we'll wrap it up for tonight. Happy that all of you came. It's nice to see you here. And I'm glad to see some of you are in masks, some of you are not with masks, and good to see that people feel free to do as they see fit. It's the 15th, so we'll have another teaching on the 22nd, I believe. And also, myself and Ajahn Titapanya are going to Portland Friends of the Dhamma on Sunday for Sunday Sila. This will be in the morning. I would assume that's live stream, but I don't know. And then, anyway, after the 22nd, then we're going to have a little adventure and go to Seattle to see Venerable Nisabo, who lives there, is trying to establish a monastery there. So that'll be nice. Or maybe it won't be. Who knows? So I wish you all a good night, and may you, if you're not staying up all night, may you sleep well with the goodness of your own metta, and wake up peacefully and with an interest in your own minds and your own hearts rather than the ways of the world.